Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Dolores Tarver. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Georgia, and it is time for the TT Time with Dr. Tarver is a wellness-based podcast. It is not intended to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health provider. And just like that, the last Tuesday in July. Can you believe August is only a couple of days away? Time goes by so fast. We have been in this series this month of minority mental health awareness, addressing rejection, the effects of incarcerations on families, overcoming hurtful legacies, and we talked about last week what it looks like to let go and how that affects us in different ways and the things we need to consider when it's time for us to potentially make a transition. I wanted to end this week on something that spoke to me, probably spoke to a lot of you, and we'll get into it here in a second. But I think we collectively all experienced heartbreak as we saw Sonia Massey be murdered. And I think it just really propelled for me into the forefront what happens when we ask for help and what support looks like. So today's episode, in honor of anyone who's ever asked for help, show up for me. What does support look like? So it's hard to not take on a wee bit of healthy cultural paranoia, if you will, when it comes to asking certain groups of people for help. These can be particularly the case when it may be family members, when it might be officers of the law, when it might be supervisors, customer service representatives. It could be educators, healthcare professionals, attorneys, just to name several. And I think that what ends up happening sometimes for us is that we see experiences where people are belittled or demeaned or harmed or rejected, made to feel dismissed or insignificant or inadequate. And it makes it really hard for you to want to ask people for help again. If you've ever in your life, and probably most of us have at least once, asked for help and not received it, then you know it can have a long lasting impact on you to the extent you may never ever want to ask anyone for help again, or you may struggle to ask people for help again. And I'll give you some examples. They are not always things that result in a loss of life, nor should they be when we ask for help. We should not lose our lives in that process. But they are things that definitely sit with us in these very uncomfortable ways. You possibly have been in a store and asked the cashier a question, or asked a salesperson a question, or even a store manager a question, and they just were rude to you. And it's like, okay, help me kind of understand how you are supposed to be in the role of giving assistance, but yet at the same time made me absolutely regret asking you for any. Sometimes there are instances where people will absolutely give you the wrong directions on purpose, as if they are upset with you because you asked them for help, or they give you information that they know isn't accurate. And I think that a lot of times we realize, like, wait, did that person do that on purpose? Because they actually, we find out later, knew the correct information or knew the right directions and didn't give them to us. And so we're left to feel like, okay, well, why would you be so malicious in doing that? I think it is really hurtful to us when we reach out to get support from people who we love and care about. And they don't give it to us. You know, you may have been so excited about launching a business. Maybe you had a book signing. Maybe you had a graduation, or you wanted to celebrate a milestone birthday, and you have shown up for people countless times. And when it comes time for people to support you, then you're met with what seems like excuses. Oh, I don't have the money. I can't make it. And then you see people, I think this is even more hurtful when you see people investing in other things that lets you know, like, you could have invested in me, you chose not to. And I think particularly when you're a person that shows up and supports other people, like most of us think that people are going to treat us the way that we treat them, and that they're going to be thoughtful about us and helpful and want to show up for us. Sure, you all have participated in group projects or been in organizations, and you have such an excitement for getting this done, and then you have those people that are coasting, like they don't show up, they don't do their part of the presentation, they don't come to the event, or they show up late. You probably have been in a situation where you've needed some assistance moving, and people tell you they're going to show up. They show up 4 hours late after you've broken your back to move all these things by yourself. And then they show up and they are not in any kind of position or condition to be able to actually help you do any work. Or sometimes they just don't show up at all. I think that's really hurtful to us when people literally just don't even show up. So it's one thing for you to show up and you not be helpful, or you be critical or dismissive. It's a whole nother level of hurt for people to not show up at all. So guess what happens? Like, if I'm going to continue to experiencing these kinds of things, when you tell me you're going to show up and you don't, when you tell me that you got me but you don't, when you showing up for other people, or I'm investing in you and I'm making all of these efforts financially as well as physically supporting you, and you're not doing the same for me, then we get to a point where we just stop asking. We would rather not be disappointed, not be rejected, not be dismissed, not go into that doctor's office and know that something is wrong with you, but not be able to have a doctor say that there is anything wrong with you. So they let you leave there feeling like, okay, that's in your head. It's not anything wrong with you. Like, I know my body, something's not right. And so not even really trying to help understand, like, what are some other things that we may need to look at that we didn't look at. But it's more so like, you need to figure that out. And like, we did what we could for you. Or what you thought was going on, I don't think that's the case. So I'm not going to actually address the issue that you brought in. So then we don't go to our medical appointments. We don't go to the ER when we should. We don't call the police when we could, because we don't want to put ourselves in a position to be unsafe or harmed, or in a situation where I walk away and I don't feel like I received anything, so it feels like it was a waste of my time. So I've taken this time to drive over here, pay this copay, or shown up at this agency expecting to be able to receive some kind of relief, and not being able to see that as an outcome. And so when I do need somebody to advocate for me, maybe I suffer in silence instead, because I don't actually really feel like there's anybody that is going to put into me what I have put into other people. I think that for a lot of us, this is something that probably starts in our childhood. Maybe somebody didn't show up for you. If you've ever been that kid who was looking to get picked up, and that person didn't show up to pick you up. And so you sat there until you were told to go in the house, or you were at that school, you had to figure out how to get home. Maybe you had to walk, or somebody was kind enough to give you a ride. And it is those kind of things that I think lay that foundation for us, that people aren't going to show up for us, that people almost normalize for us not being shown up for. Like, don't get your hopes up, because people aren't going to show up for you. So let me not go ahead and get you into that habit of expecting. Or I think the other side of that is that you end up meeting a person or having some people in your life who do show up, and then you find that you're now connected with people that don't, and you're like, wait a minute, I know this can't be right. Like, you mean this person showed up for me and I'll never have that again? So it really makes you question, what does that even look like? What does support look like? First of all, there are a lot of different types of support. And as my disclaimer every week, this list by no means is exhaustive, but I do think it's important for us to really think about what this could look like as we're figuring out how people can support us, but also figuring out how we can support other people. There is physical support that can encompass so many different things, but that physical support may literally be helping you if you've ever injured yourself, if you've ever been in a situation where you had a deficit. I have a visual impairment. You all have seen me wear my contacts. You've seen me wear my glasses. I definitely see better with the glasses than I do with the contacts. But driving at night is a challenge with either one. More so with the contacts, but even with the glasses. Like the glare of lights coming into my eyes, not my friend. I often joke and say I'm out here driving by faith and not by sight. Probably shouldn't be saying that on a public forum. But anyway, I think that that physical assistance can look in a lot of different ways. Like sometimes people are my eyes. I'm like, can you see that? Because I can't read that. People are super sweet and they'll like, hey, take a picture of it and blow it up. That way you'll be able to read it when I don't have my reading glasses that I have to put on top of my contacts to be able to see. Sometimes that physical help is things like people carrying stuff for you when you have your hands full. How many times have you been in a place where somebody saw you coming and they let that door slam? And you're like, oh, wow, okay. Thank you for being inconsiderate. Appreciate that. Good looking out. But I think a lot of times, just that awareness of that we all have different needs. I have been always so very grateful when people have said, "Oh, hey, let me unload that for you. Let me help you with that. Let me carry that for you." And I know that there have been at times though that I've been like, "Oh no, I got it," right? Because I'm so used to doing things by myself and having to kind of figure it out and navigate it that I forget, like, hey, it actually is easier if you get some help from people, so you don't have to take on that burden and that load. But again, that comes from having to be able to navigate sometimes things on my own and not having people there to help. And I've definitely been in spaces where there is nothing worse than seeing some people working really hard to like get stuff unloaded or put up after an event and you see people sitting around just watching them. You're like, really? That's you're not gonna even okay. So that physical help is really important when we have instances in our life where we're not able to get out and cut that grass. It's so nice for people in the neighborhood. I've seen people be so sweet, like as maybe somebody is widowed, and so people are like, they just start cutting their grass. Like you'll see neighbors kind of alternating, like, okay, I got the grass this week. Or as people get older, and it's like, hey, let me, I'll manage this for you. And so you just look outside and your grass is cut. And you're like, oh my gosh, right? And sometimes people won't even tell you they did it. They'll just take care of it because it needs to be done. When I lived in Nebraska, it was a difficult transition going from Louisiana to Nebraska because, of course, not having to deal with snow. And so the first time there was like a really, really heavy snow, I called and I was like, wait, are we having school? And they were like, we don't cancel school. And I was like, oh, okay. So I can get myself together and trying to, dig myself out of this driveway so I could get my car out. And a sweet neighbor had a snowblower because I had a shovel. And they just came and they were like, do you mind if I help? I always like it when people ask first. And they snowblowed my driveway for me. Like, thank you so much. I did invest in a snowblower, right? But those physical things are really important for us when somebody helps us wash those dishes, when somebody helps us fold those clothes and put them up, when someone helps pick up those toys, when someone washes your car for you. I know a lot of us are like busy, 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 and the car gets sacrificed as we're navigating. And for someone to say, hey, I'm going to wash your car for you, or let me go gas your car up, those kind of things can be really helpful. And that kind of leads into the financial support piece. And that financial support can look a lot of ways. One of the things you're going to hear me tell you is that it is important for you to understand whatever the level of support you're looking for or whatever the level of support you're offering is that you don't overextend yourself. You'll hear me joke about the overpromising and under-delivering. It's very important for you not to extend yourself in an area where you can't follow through. Because again, that is what ends up feeding for us that we can't count on people. Like, oh, yeah, I'll take care of that. Knowing I have five other commitments, I'm not going to be able to do that. Right. So financially, I have to look at my budget. And also, I need to ask myself, is the financial support something that I want to commit to? Because sometimes we're in situations, you may have children, you may have a parent who needs some financial assistance. And it's like, hey, we need to just update our budget to include helping mom out a little bit because she doesn't have enough to kind of make sure that she can get through the month, versus like I have this 35-year-old who's been living with me and doesn't want to work, and do I want to continue to support them financially, right? So being able to be thoughtful of that. But also, 'tis the season where people are asking for a lot of monetary gifts as we look at funding campaigns. And so you probably are getting texts and phone calls and carrier pigeons and sky messages about donating. And there may be things you're passionate about that you do want to donate to, but you have to remember, okay, what falls in my budget? What have I allotted for? And don't let me put myself in a place where it's going to be a financial deficit to me. So, hey, the family is going on this cruise, this trip. One family member can't afford it, but they really want to go. We're going to chip in and all ensure that they can go, versus this person knows that they can't afford it to go on this trip because they've spent their money elsewhere. Now, mind you, they've had options and choices. They just decided not to prioritize this and put their money elsewhere. And so now you're looking for me to fund this when I just saw you all on the gram flashing money at the club, right? So being thoughtful about what that looks like in terms of how you are going to financially support, and if that's something that you want to do. Now, I will tell you, money can really cause problems in relationships. So I encourage people, if you say to someone that you're going to allow them to borrow money, then you need to be very mindful of the fact that you may not be able to get it back and what's going to happen if you don't, right? So I think a lot of times as I'm thinking about whether or not, which people don't ask me for money like that, I have pretty decent boundaries around that. But if you do, then in my mind, before I give you this money, I've already decided that if I don't get it back, I can afford it, right? Now, if I get it back, that's wonderful. The return on my investment. If you need something in the future, I probably would consider doing it. But for people who don't have a habit of paying you back, that are like, oh, let me give you this money. You know, you're not going to get that money back. You owe me already $70,000, so I'm not going to give you another 10. Right. So being thoughtful about those kind of things when you're thinking about support and what it looks like, and also asking people for support. Have I done all of the things that I could do to manage this situation and address it? Because if there's a deficit with regard to how much money I have in order for me to be able to live, then I need to address that deficit, because otherwise I'm constantly going to be looking for that financial support. And what people will do is like, hey, now I'm just funding you. At this point, what are you doing to change your situation? So being thoughtful of when I'm asking, to ensure that I've done what I could do to be able to support myself and address it before I reach out to other people. And then what is going to be my plan if I'm borrowing money to be able to pay people back? Or am I in a situation where I'm like, hey, this is not going to be a loan. If you have it to spare, I'm not going to be able to pay it back. I need it for this situation. You may be in a situation where you need to bury somebody and they don't have insurance and you need that covered. And so, people are kind of piecemealing, giving money to make sure that happens. Not going to pay you all back. But I absolutely appreciate this and wouldn't ask you for it. And you know that about, certain people, like, okay, they really have to be in a situation to ask because they don't ask for money. So those are all the kind of things you want to look at in terms of supporting and being supported. There is academic support. Sometimes we are struggling with certain courses. Statistics was mine. Did not ever get to a point where I loved it, learned how to function in it long enough to be able to get through school. Probably can't do any of that stuff anymore. Right? But sometimes we're in positions where certain things are just not our strength. It may be that reading isn't your strength or writing isn't your strength. Maybe you have problems recalling things. Maybe you have problems with your study skills, right? And so you're needing that support. Somebody's asking you for that support. Am I in a position to be able to have the time to tutor this person? To be able to go through this paper with this person and be able to help them better navigate a topic sentence and supporting sentences and a concluding sentence, right? And so that is what I think a lot of times people start out with the good intentions, but that's what ends up kind of severing the relationships, is because, hey, I was counting on you to assist me with this, and then you are like, yeah, I don't have time for that anymore, but we didn't actually discuss the changes in that so I could make accommodations and be able to get some additional support. Legal support. Excuse me. Now I know that, get a sip of water here. Now I know that one of the things that we tend to do with our internet legal degrees is offer people legal information when they get into situations. Oh, this is how you handle that DUI. Oh, this is how you handle, they put a warrant out for your arrest. Oh, this is how you have to handle that speeding ticket because you were driving 20 miles over the speed limit. Oh, this is how you handle, they found some residue in your car, right? I do want to be very clear with you that there is no substitute for an actual business relationship with an attorney. So be very mindful of people giving you legal advice, that it is information that people are sharing with you based on their own personal experiences, and it is not a substitute for a professional information. Now, there are absolutely going to be times when people are advocates, they've learned the law, they are able to help, for example, for formerly incarcerated individuals who are trying to get some of their rights back, that there are absolutely organizations that can assist you with that. They also have legal people as a part of that team. So if they need to refer you for that, they do. They will help you with paperwork things like that, how to fill those out correctly, but they're not going to give you any legal advice because they recognize the limitations of the scope of what they're able to do. Not to mention, you can put yourself in some litigious situations by giving people information that's false. And I encourage those of you that are receiving information, that you always make sure that you are ensuring the information that you receive is accurate. Health and wellness, this is another one. All of us are coaches and trainers and all of the stuff. So you're on TikTok getting all these health and wellness ideas and recommendations and support. But I do think it's important for us to ensure that we are working with trusted licensed professionals and people who are very well versed and educated in their craft. That doesn't mean that everybody has to be out here with an MD or PhD in order for them to be able to give you sound information. However, you should be able to see what their training looks like, because I think this is another way we get disappointed and don't feel like we're supported, because we're going to places where people actually can't give us what we need. You all may remember, it's been a couple of cases of this, but one stood out to me in particular. This doctor loved this young man who had been practicing as an MD for years. I mean, years this boy had been practicing, and he didn't have anybody's education, certificate, degree, anything. So it is very important that you vet anybody that you're trying to get support from in that health and wellness area, because I think a lot of times one of the reasons why we're underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, dismissed is because we're seeking out services from people who are not culturally responsive or not necessarily as well educated and versed in the field, that which sometimes we need a specialist. Sometimes we need someone who is, has more information about a particular gender, a particular ethnic group, a particular cultural or religious background, any of these things that may be playing into what I'm experiencing. Someone who may be more versed in understanding some of how the natural things can affect my body, as opposed to me taking medications for them, right? What interactions affects. Sometimes I'll tell some of my clients, like, hey, have you actually talk with the pharmacist about, like, you got a lot of different medications. How do you know they're not interacting with each other? And they go and they talk to a pharmacist, and then they also have one of their providers kind of streamline and look at all their medications, and they realize, like, yeah, I'm taking two or three medications that do the same thing, and so that's what's contributing to me having some of the side effects that I'm having. So it's important, like, again, when we look for support, that we're going to the right places, the right people, the right expertise, and who have the time and availability for us in order for us to feel supported. So let's kind of switch into some of the more emotional aspects of what support looks like, because I think that's what most people think about when they think about support. In addition to you showing up for me, doing what you said you would do, following through on what you said you would do, being present for me as I'm experiencing things, being able to show empathy and love and kindness and caring for me. In all of our lives, we will experience some type of loss. That may be the death of someone, that could be the loss of job, it could be the loss of abilities, benefits, children, all of these things that happen in our life. And we want somebody to hear us and be present with us. And I think a lot of times we're looking for support sometimes from people that don't know actually how to listen, they only know how to talk. And so you've had those conversations with people and they're like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And you think they really want to know how you're doing. So you're going to tell them like, "Actually, I've kind of been struggling. Here's some things that I've been experiencing." And they'll say, "You know what? That happened to me." And next thing you know, 2 hours later, you have been talking about nothing about what they have going on in their lives. Then they get off the phone, they feel better, light and lively, and you're left there like, "Wow, what just happened?" Right? So being able to emotionally support people is a lot of different things. One, it is being able to actually hear what they're saying, to sit with them, to be present with them, to be intentional about making sure you're showing up for them, right? And so that might look to you as if, like, hey, I am asking questions about, what it is they need from me in terms of emotional support. Maybe they want a little hope, a little encouragement, instilling in them like, hey, it's gonna be okay. It might be like, hey, I'm looking for that prayer, might need a good scriptural word, but it is being able to connect on a level that's deeper with regard to our emotional components. And sometimes what we'll say is, oh, you shouldn't feel that way, or um, don't waste your time on that. And people actually do need to have moments where they get to express whatever it is they're feeling, even if that makes the other person uncomfortable sometimes, because we don't like to see people cry and all upset. And so we're like, yeah, yeah, I don't want to deal with that, push that away. But sometimes people need to be in that space, and being in that space means, yeah, me sitting with you may mean I might cry too, but I might need to cry as well. It is important that when we are supporting people, and this is kind of navigating into social support, right? Because it is important for us as we think about what social support looks like. Sometimes people are in situations where they have a lot of anxiety. Being around people is uncomfortable for them. Sometimes people want to please other folks and they don't want people to be disappointed. They have a hard time setting boundaries. Sometimes it is that I just want that closeness from somebody, like it just feels kind of lonely and I'm by myself. And so, as we're looking at what support looks like for people socially, it could look in a lot of different ways. It may be that I'm the person that encourages you to get out, like, hey, I know that you're like, look, who's gonna be there? What time we leaving? I want to be back before it gets dark. All of these things, but you may have that person in your life who's like, hey, I'm gonna be there with you. We'll stay about an hour. Let's just give it an opportunity. And so you're allowing them to be able to maybe work on some of their social discomfort and expand their social network. That social wellness might also look like introducing people to different things, introducing people to different groups. We get comfortable, and so we kind of stay in the same place, doing the same things with the same types of people, or we're isolated and don't engage with people because we think people aren't safe, aren't going to be people that are reciprocal, and so I'm not even going to bother. As we say, no new friends. Right? So sometimes we're encouraging people to be able to recognize that there are some amazing people out there who also want a genuine connection with someone. And even though they've had some negative experiences in the past, that doesn't mean that they will always have negative experiences and it's not possible for them to have some lasting social connections. All right, so it could look like that. Sometimes we just need some people to affirm us, and also be able to like give us a good self appraisal. So when you've been in a situation where, I mean, we can talk about our episode last week when we talked about when to leave something. Like sometimes it's time for you to leave. You're kind of fighting it because you don't want to let people down, or pride, or all of the different factors that go into us making those tough decisions. Like sometimes we have a hard time being able to appraise ourselves and be able to really evaluate. So we need people who are going to be that mirror for us and say, like, hey, so if we're being honest, then you're not really okay. That's not really healthy for you. We've seen this pattern before. This is what it ends up happening when you talk to this certain person over and over again. We understand that you feel worse and have dread when you go to work in this environment. I absolutely recognize that you continue to keep pouring into and investing into this child of yours who treats you with disrespect and just takes your money and then blocks you when they don't want to have to deal with you after that, right? So sometimes we are, in our way of supporting people, being able to show them things that they may have difficulty with, the blind spots. if you will. Um, and then sometimes we're just serving as a resource of information. You know how you find out good stuff and you just want to share it? Like, I love when my veterans help each other out. Like, hey, here's some resources for you to be able to get your disability. Here's some resources for you. That's a good doctor that will actually be able to address this issue. Here's somebody that listens. Here's somebody that can help you be able to manage the things you have going on around your house, your repairs, and they're not going to be overcharging you. Here's safe people that you can do business with, right? So providing information to people is a good way to support. And also, what I offer to people who think the only way they can support is financially. Like, oh, well, I have to give them this money. I'm responsible for them. Like, you also can give them information, information that will allow them to be able to solve problems, information that will allow them to be strategic, information that will allow them to be able to navigate so they don't have to depend on you and be back in that situation of asking you for support in the same way, because now you've empowered them to be able to support themselves. Let's say you are in a situation where you do want to provide support. So we talked about a variety of different areas and what that could look like in terms of support. But in the event you do decide to support someone, you always want to start by asking the person what they actually need. Not what you want to give them, not what's comfortable for you, but what do they need? And then you are going to be able to actively listen, connect with them, ask questions. You can validate their experience, even if it's not anything consistent with you. You can affirm what they're going through, all of these things. And you can be able to focus on them and not focus on yourself, right? So I'm listening, I'm hearing you, I'm understanding what your need is, I'm recognizing thing is very important to you, and here are the ways that you would like to be able to be supported. And then I can consider my own limitations and how I'm able to support the person. As you may say, like, hey, um, I am really wanting someone to come with me to visit my parents. Every time I go over there, like, they're negative, they're critical. They start talking to me about why I'm not married, and is something really wrong with me, and I'm never going to give them grandchildren, and I need to lose some weight. That's why nobody wants me. Like, it really feels awful, but I feel bad when I don't go and see them because I'm their only child, they're my parents, and I just feel like it's the right thing to do. They're aging, so I know I need to go over there and check on them. I just don't want to do it by myself. And you may be at a place where, like, you have a very similar situation with your own parents. And going into that environment puts you in a very negative state. And you realize, like, I'm not going to be a lot of help to you because I'm going to be triggered and over here being reactive. And I'm going to say something to your parents that I can't say to mine. And then that's going to cause even more problems and confusion. However, here are the ways that I can support you. So let's find out what your parents need. Oh, they need some help going to the grocery store. Like, it's hard for them to get out. They don't want to be out in the traffic and the way people drive now. And so, okay, let's have them make a list. We'll get that list. And then what I can do is I can go grocery shopping with you. I can get the stuff. I can help you bring it to them and help you get it put in. But, like, we're going to be not engaging and spending time. You've got a key to their house. We'll put the groceries in there while they're at their doctor's appointment. Right? Oh, they need some help cleaning up. Like, what we'll do is we'll schedule them to be picked up by the senior citizen van at church, and they can go hang out with their buddies. And while they're gone, we'll clean their house, right? So I may be able to still support you in that way, but I'm also being able to navigate my own boundary around making sure I'm taking care of myself. Okay. I do think it's also important for us to, again, only commit to things that we're able to follow through with. I know that we care about people and we want to be there for them and show up for them because we know what it's like when people don't show up for us. But it does not actually help people when you overcommit and you're stretched thin and you can't really be present with them and show up in the ways that you said that you would because you're overextended, right? So that showing up piece is very important. However you're going to show up and be consistent in that. And I think that it is also very important for us to understand that we need to kind of check in with people after. Like, people ask us to show up and we show up and we think, oh, our work here is done. Check in with folks like, hey, did I show up for you? in a way that felt good for you, that felt affirming to you, that was actually something that you needed. Because as we're offering alternatives to people, we want to make sure that we're giving them alternatives that actually are still supportive. Like, you absolutely don't need to carry that person and pay for them a place when they've already damaged your credit 3 times by not paying the rent where they were living before. But how you support them may be, here's some places where you can fill out an application, and I can help you fill out that application for you to be able to get on the list for housing, right? So being able to navigate those kind of things. Okay, so say that all to say, it is very important for us to recognize what is supportive and not supportive when we need help and we're asking for assistance, but also when people are asking us for assistance and we're offering help. So, again, the takeaway for me today is being sure that you're going to the right spaces to get what you need, and also making sure that you're not overcommitting to giving people what they need when you're not in a position to do so. Okay, everybody be well.